I'd like to call to order the committee meeting of the whole for July 22nd, 2022 at 6:30 PM. If we can all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Gonzalez.
Present.
Trustee Henson. Trustee Horn.
Here.
Trustee Wilson.
Present.
Trustee Udris.
Present.
Okay, item up for discussion is the PBS replacement of the Park Pavilion. I know it was presented at the last board meeting, so we've got an overview. So I would like to open this up for discussion. Any questions for Chad? Any thoughts we have on what we want to do with replacing the pavilion?
I think the first order of business to be decide whether we want to have it enclosed or open, and then we can go from there.
Both.
At two different times, yes. With the capacity or capability of closing.
Yes.
Yes. So I'm for closing. Be having the capability of with the rolling doors closing. Size too. Are we going to stick with what we already have? Or are we going to smaller, bigger, larger?
I know in talking with Diana, I mean, her comment to me was she'll take it as big as we want to go to build it, but really thought that at the very least keeping the same size, and I agree with that. I think at the very least we want to maintain the same size that we had.
Yeah.
And then,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry,
Ladies first.
you're so sweet. Chad, and then also the conversation that I had with Diana, and the discussion, can we utilize that building or keep the shell of it and then maybe bring the two pieces together kind of thing? Or would we need to knock down that building and start over? Can you see us incorporating that present building and just redoing? And then adding on the front where the pavilion or garage doors kind of are?
So there's
Rolling doors.
two buildings there. The one that the original pavilion, that's what we're talking about, correct? Connected to. I think you connect right to it.
You can connect right to it. So architect? Are you architect?
Not personally,
General.
but our
It's a
team.
general.
Okay. So, like if we took like the front off of that building and then build it out forward?
What we'd probably do is,
Side.
we likely wouldn't maintain the same height. We'd step it down. We could remove that, the facade off that, and continue that straight out. What we have to figure out is, again, whether it's steel or it's wood. Because if we're adding a steel building to a wood building, there's architectural changes that we have to account for.
The present building isn't wood, is it? The steel, or wood frame underneath?
frame.
Wood
Yeah,
frame
wood
underneath,
frame,
okay.
And we're thinking probably along the lines of still pavilion.
Yes. Agreed.
So-
Okay.
So thank you for coming out last week and tonight, when everyone should be home with their families, but that's another story. Some great designs there, like the work you do. When thinking about this, I think of the park plan that we put together about a year ago, that we spent good money on. The park plan calls for that park building with a pavilion attached. That's what it calls for. We do have, you gave a lot of, I mean, the sky is the limit on what we do, right? But looking at that plan, there's opportunities that may open up for this building being part of the park plan, which it is, being part of the park, the Public Works building being part of the park plan and using that for public events and so forth. My preference is to have our plan that we have already and work that plan. In other words, keep it a open-air pavilion and have other buildings in this complex, this acreage, be used for Four Seasons accessibility and availability and use. So wood or steel, doesn't really matter to me. I mean, we did have a wood pavilion there, lasted many years, did fine. If people want steel, that's fine. As our needs grow, this building could be retrofitted and made and have enclosures and drop-down garage door type closing for it. But I fear that if you design it to be a four-season building, then the cost is really going to go up, because you need HVAC and plumbing and electrical and so forth. So my vote would be just to keep it a pavilion at this time.
So I'll kind of expand off of what you're saying, and I agree, I'm all for steel. I think in the long run, that's going to last the longest, be the sturdiest. I was very interested about the overhead door, whether it be a roll-up or actual garage-type doors that go up on a track. Having been at numerous functions there, people know that pavilion can be a wind tunnel. And so having the ability to close a partial side, completely enclose it, gives a versatility that we've never had, that I think, and I know Diana in my conversation with her was very excited about that kind of a possibility. The one thing that we thought about and wanted to ask is, like, with those overhead doors, is it possible for them to be key operated as opposed to push buttons, so that over a weekend you can leave them open and not have to worry about people coming in and raising and lowering doors, closing doors and doing whatever inside, out of view of anybody else, which I'm sure you can do something like that, yeah, to be able to lock out the doors, so you can lock them down, lock them up, whatever.
Much like our concession doors.
Yeah, and, but I personally would like to see some kind of fireplace in there. I think that could really, whether it's gas or, gas-fed or wood burning, could be kind of a nice touch that we haven't seen there. But also, maybe even adding a couple like garage-type heaters in there, so that we can extend the number of months that we can use it, to be able to close the doors, kick some heaters on. You don't necessarily need air conditioning, but just some couple of those big block, heaters in there that could take the edge off, so.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to lean into a little bit of what you're saying. The cost implications, they don't have to be significant. I mean, of course, you can stick with what you had, but the flexibility you have when you put in overhead doors, you keep the pavilion, the inside of it, the same. You keep it wide open. So really, your finishes become your outside overhead doors, and then maybe some unit heaters in the inside. You're not investing in all kinds of ductwork and condensing units for air conditioning it. So there's a lot of flexibility you can have if you want to minimize the upfront investment for that. We're working on another project right now. I just looked today, knowing that you're considering these overheads. They're putting it's a black anodized is what they call it, the aluminum full glass overhead doors. They're about $7,300 a piece. So you spread that out however you want. If it's 100 foot long and you have 25-foot bays, hypothetically, you could fit 2 doors in between both those bays. You could do 1 door, all depending on what kind of flexibility you really want to have in there. So it doesn't have to be a substantial investment to enclose it. It doesn't have to be like a home in there, conditioned space-wise, but it does give you flexibility if you do enclose it with those doors.
And I like what Heidi had mentioned about possibly redoing the facade of the existing building, because one of the things that we talked about was trying to do some sort of impact protection with the windows that were there, so that if you close it and you were playing soccer in there, or some kind of, game that involved balls, you're not worried about balls hitting the windows and breaking windows. So creating some sort of impact barrier there.
I have to draw this, go ahead.
Well, if you're talking, I mean, now we're getting a little bit, expanding this vision, it sounds like. I mean,
Just a little bit.
pavilion, I mean, if you're, that building, if you're gonna make upgrades on that park building per se, it needs some venting for an industrial kitchen. You might as well, you might as well do that.
Oh, and that's definitely something to look at, too.
You know, and the other thing is, do you want to use the upstairs for something other than storage?
So I
Because it
would-
needs, it would need some.
But that's
ADA
also
stuff.
something that down the road can be looked at, that doesn't have to be tied into the pavilion, you know.
I would agree, yep.
And I'm thinking this is a one-time project, so I would love for that upstairs to go away. And then, so the ceiling, we can raise the ceiling in that part. So it's, so we have room to do, you know, so somebody 6'2" won't hit the ceiling when they put their arm up, kind of thing. So I would love for it to kind of, that's why I said, you know, marry the two things together. Have the pavilion, and then I'm thinking, okay, so go back one for the DPW building, like the garages that he called, I think, drive-through, right? So garage doors on either side, so we could have it and open up either side or portions thereof, so the.
Yeah.
then
Well, that's why I like the individual doors in the
Yeah.
pavilion, because then you can raise and lower as needed. You need to block the wind over here, but leave this open for people to pass through or whatever.
And that's
I've
what-
been in there for different vendor things, and vendors are chasing their product, you know,
Yeah.
because it's getting blown all over the place.
And then the other thing I think that we are sorely lacking in this village, I think we would all agree, is open meeting space, or like the party space.
Yes.
So if that park building, if we could utilize, and that's why I thought taking out that front facade and kind of open it all up, and we could have meeting space in there, and have like the heavy draw curtains in between, so we could actually, two kids' parties at the same time kind of thing, or a meeting and, or two different activities, you know, along the same lines. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? You know Romeoville?
You can read your mind.
The Romeoville, the community center. That's like the Taj Mahal. We would need like 1/10 of what, but I think for the village, they thought of everything. You know, they're having birthday party rooms, they had meeting rooms, they had training rooms with AV in it, so you could hold meetings to do with AV and stuff, equipment in there. Certainly, we don't need a gym, but, you know, those are the kind of things that I think, but also to Doug's point, we have a couple other options, but
building
if
across the street.
The DPW down there, if we could put, you know, artificial grass in there and have whatever, you know, so.
Flag football, indoor football.
Flag, indoor
whatever.
football, right.
Indoor games.
Indoor games or micro soccer or something, so that's why this is my wish list, my dream, you know, to be able to kind of put them all together.
Well, and I think the park plan talks about all those things. That's one piece of it over there, but there's this building over there that could all meet some of
Be
those
part of it.
needs, be a
Right.
part of it, and, you know, as we, as things
So where
come
was it?
together.
Where was it? Yeah, the one across
Yeah,
that way.
Yeah, the elementary center across the street could be
That-
your meeting rooms and,
That is gonna take a ton of money
you know,
to update,
but.
a ton.
Everything takes a ton of money.
Even if we were going to go that route, the pavilion being separate from the Parks and Rec building, that we could bump out the side as we've seen with the PBS plans, you could have office space built additional side, whether you want to connect it in front.
Yeah, that's the other thing
But
for-
that would have, that would play down, I'm thinking down the line. This project, the smaller project, I'm just thinking just the pavilion. Under the recommendation of the Parks and Rec director, she preferred, or she stated that she advised that enclosed would extend the shelf life or the season of operation for the pavilion, and would also, as Trustee Udrich said, that would make it more creature comfort because the wind does pick up in there, and having that capability of closing off the wind. Which means, too, we think about PA system and things while we're doing it now, because I know in other pavilions, they have the aquatic speakers, and they have the PA system already set up, and the gas garage heaters. and things that, so then they could extend that through the winter months even, push it further. And when we do have events, we're always utilizing some kind of PA system, but to have it built in would be awesome, so one-stop shop type deal while we're doing it. Future project plan to create that office space that, I don't know, I've heard several people asking and inquiring about renting office space, or is there office space available for meetings or whatever in the village, and that would be nice to have as an option moving further, but I think that's going to come down probably
Well,
further down the
for
line.
Diana needs a real office, though.
Yes, we need to get her out of there. So that building, plus in the grand scheme of thing, Village Hall won't even be here, DBW won't be there. This will all be Parks and Rec. We might not even want to put a building there. We might want to put it over here or extend out or change locations. So Pavilion right now, I don't think we have to get too elaborate. I would like to see it enclosed so we can extend the use, the purpose, and also under the recommendation of the Parks and Rec director to extend the life or the serviceability of it, season. So, but I'm kind of with Doug. I don't think we need to get too elaborate on it, but if we're going to do it, might as well enclose it.
Are you talking permanently enclose it or having the doors?
No, the capabilities with the
Garage
doors,
door-
yes.
Garage
yes.
doors, right?
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, no doors, yeah. The
That
option.
building should have then the kitchen, the industrial kitchen with vents, right? If we
We could add that on to the project.
That could be done when we do the concession,
Yep.
concessions and all that.
To your existing kitchen over there? Okay. Just putting exhaust in.
When we redo the
Sorry?
concession, the concession building, that
Tell where my
would
mind
probably
is.
be the better time to redo the kitchen part as well and update that. at the
Is
same
there enough
time.
room for my band? Yeah. Yeah. So Mike, we're on the same page. The tendency is to grow this project. I can feel it, that we want to grow this because we do have these needs.
And the momentum.
And the momentum and some funding for this, but I would like us to stick with our park plan that we've spent money on and work that.
But
And this is,
everything that we've just talked about, like you said, is already in that plan. So
yeah,
we just have to divide, figure out what we're doing first.
So it showed the pavilion on that plan, it's just, this would be a modification to it.
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of
Make it a
slight update to
three-season.
what we have. Replace the wood with steel, add the doors, maybe, like I said, I personally would like to see a fireplace, which would then give you, and the heaters, a lot more options and lots more versatility for the building. And I know, like, Diana, when she explained to me, we were pretty much on the same page. So,
And right now, I think we've got budgeted for the pavilion. So we need to keep that in mind too.
can you do it for 150?
Sorry.
152.
Wow, you drive a hard bargain. Wow.
Can I jump in with a question? So looking at just the pavilion, put in your notes 235 to 250. So that's just, my understanding, we did a structure, steel structure, pavilion replacement. That's what we're looking at approximately.
Yeah, and again, it's arbitrary, but that's excavation, concrete.
Right, but that's electrical, that's everything
Yeah,
for what we know the price to be this moment.
sure.
But do you have an idea, if we do the roll doors that the board's asking about, that additional cost, if we did it to, minimized all the other, but if we can get those roll doors, everybody seems to have an idea of what we're looking at, more than the 250.
Yeah, it would depend, Ruben, on how many of those doors you guys would want. Talking about, like you were saying, driving that cost, do we want that fireplace in there?
Mm-hmm.
How do you want that to be? It's on one end wall. How does that integrate into the flow of the building? If you're enclosing it, do you put a nice, but not real expensive, like polished concrete down? If people are going to be in there as opposed to just a raw concrete. So you're creating an environment in there as opposed to just a raw pavilion. so to speak. So there's those costs that are nice, but they start to
Yep.
trickle up. But they're easy to determine too, of what those implications could be, so you all can say, no, we don't need that right now.
Mhm.
And that would be just part of this front-end planning process too.
So,
Here's what we
but-
like, let's count the cost.
But again, like with the school district, you know, bad money or good money over bad, you know, we don't want to do this again in 10 years, you know, so we're planning for, you know, decades to come. So if we don't get doors now, like how, you know, what is it going to cost in 10 years from now? Or 4 years from now, when we can do it, kind of thing.
Do you generate, like what level, what's the ratio of how much more revenue you generate by having a seasonal, fully enclosed, decent building as opposed to just a standard pavilion? You're renting it out more to where those increases are almost irrelevant based on the revenue that you generate.
And the Parks Department isn't a revenue generator, it's a friend-durator.
Well,
So it's quality of life here, it's
Right.
not a moneymaker.
Yeah.
but I was thinking, how often do they rent that out? Is it every week?
Every weekend, yep. Every
Really?
weekend.
Okay.
Yeah.
So being able to close it off like Diana said would extend their
Okay.
ability to rent it out.
And if there was more than one room, then we could do it
And
even
extend
more.
their
so.
offering of kids programs and really any programs.
I always go back to, we built one of those air inflated domes, and you guys know how soccer is. And once they built that, the amount of revenue they generate, because it's always, well, the season's over, so we have nowhere to go. Well, now you have soccer, you have baseball, you have drone racing, all that kind of stuff. Well, it just opens up opportunities.
Where was that, did you say?
The dome we built is in Crown Point, Indiana.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's too bad money's involved.
So for the doors, I mean, what's kind of the maximum width that you can do on those types of doors? I mean, we're talking 20 feet, 30 feet?
That would be way too expensive. So the difference between the building we're doing right now, we have 8x8s and 10x10s.
Okay.
And there's a $400 to $500 difference between the two.
Okay.
So $7,500
Mhm.
piece. When you start to
And
go.
10 foot wide is about as wide as you like to go.
We could go wider,
Mm-hmm.
and we could look at the implications for that. You know, based on how we structure the building, how wide your bays are, as opposed to 2 doors. Do we do one that's just a little wider?
Right.
It's glass, so as you can imagine, the wider you go, because that adds weight, so that adds cost.
Right.
Framing for that.
And are they on like a pulley system or like hydraulic, so you just push a
A
button
motor.
or somebody pulling?
We would have, again, that's based on your desire. Typically, we'll put, and you see those button controllers, open, close, stop, and then they have the safety photo eyes and all of them just for protection. But you can bypass that just with a manual operation with a lockout.
Yeah, so if we got our parks director pulling 8 or 10-foot doors, 8-foot would probably be preferable.
Well, I think,
They're pretty smooth. They work.
I think you'd have them all electric.
Yeah.
And then the stop, then, so we can open up partway.
Mhm.
Do you know the measurements of the pavilion now?
Was it 50 by 100? I think I recall that.
50 by 100?
Something that,
Yeah, you got it written here, it's,
So do you pick the picture of the doors right
Yeah,
next to
50
each other?
50 by 100.
Or with wall in between?
Kind of a column in between.
Column in between.
Right, yeah. So if you have like 10-foot doors, it would be, you'd have your 10-foot door, there'd be, some sort of column, and then another 10-foot door, column, type of thing. And then we could decide, do we want the whole 100-foot run to be as many doors as we can fit? Or do we want to do like 4 or 5 doors on each of the long sides, maybe 2 doors on the end?
and we can engineer it how we want to as
Yeah.
well, based on.
I'm sorry, do what?
We can engineer it however we want to, really. Back to the steel versus wood, though, I guess that's a question we would need to talk about as well as timing. Steel It's just, it's out there.
It
It's
is,
time
but I
to
think,
get, so.
to me, it's worth the wait. I'd rather see the steel there.
Now we're gonna look at this yellow and white tent until next year,
Well,
October.
they're gonna take it down in the winter.
Yeah.
and then have to put it
Put it
back
back
up,
up.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It'll be red next year.
so steel, does that mean it's available next year, spring of '23? Is that what you're?
So we'd probably have to pick something and get it on the books and start ordering pretty much right away.
We would have to order it right away now. Now, I guess another variable to throw into the mix is if you are enclosing that value of steel, not to say it declines significantly, but it's not as important anymore because now the entire building's enclosed. So you don't have that exposure.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Against the wood versus steel, you mean, because it's enclosed?
We just did a project for St. Anne. You all know where that's at, St. Anne Fire Department. I don't know if you heard the story of that, but we're down and we ended up building that. So that's a Lester building. We're a Lester distributor. It's a wood, but it's a really tough, I guess is the best way to phrase it, strong building, engineered really strong with all the beams and support structure to it. So I would not be opposed to that either in terms of having this building.
Is that you built a pavilion for them or a fire?
It was a building,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
For St. Anne Fire Department, you bet.
But
okay.
it's similar size to what
Yeah.
this is.
Mhm.
They built taller.
And that's materials for that were a little more available?
They were.
Okay,
Yeah,
good to know.
we can get wood a lot quicker.
Okay. What's the, if it's enclosed and it's wood, what's the maintenance protocol for that? Just paint?
Yeah. Yeah, it depends on what kind of finishes you want.
Sure.
And can we get the shiny concrete in there too then?
Yeah.
We talked about ground costs.
The shiny, with the sprinkles.
With the
With
sprinkler?
the-
Stamped concrete,
So if
like
it's
I heard before.
like a polished concrete, if it's
Polished, yeah.
or an epoxy, just
Yeah.
you see the nice.
Well, think of
If
what
it's
you
$6 to
know.
$7, say it's $7 a square foot,
Epoxy.
yeah, 5,000. So it's 35 grand.
Emblem and stuff.
To get a nice finish that's durable and can withstand parties and activity and children.
But doesn't get slippery, that's the thing.
And you can put, what they call a flat, a colored flake that has a little grit to it anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't want it too slick. People fall on.
But I do like the idea of the wood, if it's enclosed like we're talking about, and that saves a little bit of cost versus the steel.
Yeah, you'll save a little bit of cost, but time,
Yeah.
of course, this day and age, time is money as well. So.
Yeah, sure.
With the wood and the steel roll doors, how would that marry up? Would that, because I know I've seen some with brick veneer, steel doors, roll doors, along with the brick veneer, or
On the outside.
on the outside. So, versus just the wood, how would that look? By any chance, do you have any pictures of that, or?
Not with me, but
Okay.
we would, again, it depends on how many of the doors you want to go with, because if you're not filling in a solid wall, naturally, you're going to need to finish the outside where it's
Right.
not finished off. But if you're going for a lot of the glass, a lot of the open air exposure, then you're not going to have a lot of material on the outside. What we'd likely do is we would marry up that building, the pavilions, finish to the outside in those areas where there's no doors with the existing building, so there's consistency
Mhm.
all the way around. Or a complementary type of material, whether it's brick or something else, because if you're not going to have a lot of that surface area, it's not going to be really expensive.
That would be great to kind of match
I guess I would envision as many garage doors, let's put them that way, as possible to make it, just open it up as much as
Yeah,
possible.
on the east, the long sides, the east-west sides?
All
Yeah, on the
sides,
long
yes.
All
sides,
sides.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, so
Well,
the
two
short side
sides,
then.
if the one in wall, so, or, is that our
This
south
way,
end
yeah.
wall,
Mhm.
if that has the fireplace, then we wouldn't put doors on that end. It'd just be your.
Maybe a service door or
Okay.
something.
Yeah.
You know?
Or an entrance door, so.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, just a regular, we kind of work, we call them man doors versus overhead doors.
What about a woman door?
Yeah.
Brother.
A woman door.
A woman door? Is there a woman door too?
Sure.
Okay.
That can be on the
Just
other
checking,
side.
just
That's a
checking.
good question.
It's a Doug door.
That'll be
It's
on the
always
right
been called a
side.
man door.
Answers to questions nobody thought of.
Yeah.
Does that cause your minds to
Looking
pour
at there
over
all
the
the
money?
Well, I mean, you definitely
It's
have
expensive.
to double think about the steel. I mean,
He's not wearing a jacket now.
because my biggest concern with the wood was we were gonna be, you know, even 10, 20 years down the road, be dealing with rot like we were. So like, we're gonna
I'm
stop.
trying to remember when that was put up. I know, does anyone know? I mean, it was here.
Oh, it's been rotting since.
Oh, it's been-
Since
And
I
just-
moved, since I moved into
Yeah.
Monee,
But
it's
yeah.
been
And
falling apart, so.
But he
Well-
brought up a good point, too. It's going to be enclosed now, so you won't get that weather and wear and
Yeah,
tear
That's
as
what I'm
much.
saying, so now he's got me thinking about.
Yeah,
you know,
me too.
here longer and-
Well, I moved in '94 and it was here. It was probably here 20 years before that,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
But it's enclosed, so there would be no wood exposed.
Right,
so,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Mhm.
It's exposed and you can still do it, but it's up. That's the biggest thing with exposure to the exterior elements versus steel.
But by the time you do the wood and you enclose it and you do the brick veneer and all of that, cost-wise, compared to doing the steel, a little over the
Oh,
steel.
You still need to finish the outside of the steel the same way.
Okay.
Because the steel versus wood is just your superstructure.
Okay.
It's just your.
So still would do the veneer and the wrap and all that.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck too, because the building the Parks building that's there now, if we're just talking about enclosing the pavilion, I don't think we could leave that building as it stands and just build the pavilion on that side of it.
Why is that?
Why?
Why?
The pavilion is gonna look awful beautiful and not match to that Parks building that sits next to it.
I think you can do a wrap that makes it,
Yeah, we can replat it the same way. Because it's just all metal panel on there right now, isn't it? Yeah.
I think so.
I would do a vent so you could do an industrial kitchen if you're doing that, though. But, okay, but we can,
Well, okay.
we can take that off the table for now. I'm fine with that. That can be done some other time.
No.
So let's just keep it,
Keep it simple.
stay on target, yeah.
Are you limited by your ability to rent that kitchen out by not having the?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we are.
By absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So would you go for expanding the kitchen side and putting that kitchen in there, in that building?
Well, okay, but then I'll ask, do we really, how much of use would we get out of that if we're building a concession building, you know, tearing the one down and rebuilding a concession building where we have the ability to do a full kitchen there? Do we need,
Yes, we do, because the concession building is gonna be in the middle of the field now.
No.
The concession building is
could
not
be
gonna be.
moved about 50, 60?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna be
Yeah,
anywhere
north.
near that.
Okay.
The concession.
I'm just
will
thinking
be-
though, really, in the long run, do we still, or, and then that's a good answer to it, but is there still a need for this, for the two separate cooking areas?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because, well, if you have an industrial or just a regular kitchen, vented kitchen, you can actually do a cooking class, you know, when they rent the parties, they're not limited to, they can use
Yeah.
the oven or
You
something.
can do a
there.
fish fry.
Yeah.
Have the fish fry again.
There's even a couple of small businesses that vested interest in it because they couldn't do it in their home. But if they had a facility to rent out, and they even reached out to the village, but we don't have anything right now currently. So that, in the looking in the future, that would be something that we would probably want to entertain, as Doug said.
Yeah.
I think it needs to be put into furthest.
Can always have it as a add-on.
Did Farnsworth do that, the park plan?
Yes.
Okay. We'll talk to them about that.
You know them, right? Do you know them?
Frank Farnsworth, great guy.
Frank. Not Frank.
I don't know.
It's interesting. Okay. You've been awful quiet. Do you have questions?
I have no questions.
Do you have comments?
I like the steel. I like the ability to enclose. I think we should keep our focus on the pavilion at this
Yeah.
moment because that's what we are in most need of. Not that things don't need to also be grown and expanded, but we do have the overall parks plan.
Yep.
So, let's not undercut the horse.
Rome wasn't built in a day. It's true, it wasn't.
Good thing we don't live in Rome.
Neither was Monee, built in a day.
And now I think it's moving down to legit, okay, now here's our options. And then as we get more of the difficult task is, here are the options, here's the cost, what do we think we want to, keep it simple or do we, keep it casual, so, and that's just, we don't know unless we get some ideas, so if we're all set on steel, it's a great place to start, and then the doors is a great place to start, and then how many, what?
If we are enclosing now, again, so steel isn't as much of a concern, so it could be a wood structure. So you have a savings there if you're enclosing, you're adding all these doors, you're adding costs, so there's some offset by keeping with the wood versus so trying to kind of balance all that out, if it makes sense.
So what you're saying is that the steel really becomes more of a benefit if we're leaving it just open all the time, but because we're wanting to add the doors with the ability to close it in, that really,
Yeah.
going wood versus steel doesn't really make much of a difference.
No, and because you're enclosing it and you're tying into an existing wood building, I probably almost feel more comfortable keeping with the wood because it's all enclosed now. We can do steel. We've done it, steel versus wood, plenty of times, but if it makes sense, then. Sorry to create too many questions. Sure.
So, yeah, I think real quick, so Chad, I think we'll have a consensus of what we're looking for, and I can shoot that once I have everybody's, decision
Okay.
to you for a price, and I don't think I'll be able to get this on the board. You're gonna need time to come up with some.
Yeah, our time will be, well, initially it'll be putting together the design cost to prepare that. Because again, the design build model is we're designing and because we're constructors, we're putting all those numbers together on the front end before we go to construction. So you know what those costs
Well,
will be.
with
So
what you heard tonight, do you have a good idea of what you can take, and kind of give us an approximate number?
I'll talk with our design team. And yeah, I can have that, Ruben, by Wednesday. I could have that design for you.
And we're saying we're keeping the 50 by 100.
I think keep the same size.
Yeah. This is a good start here, what you've got here, this amount. And we're looking at 8,000 roughly a door, or 8-foot doors, and just add a buffer in there.
Yeah.
To go 8 doors, 4 and 4 on the side, you know.
I think we should with the 10-foot doors, but go a little bit wider.
So you're still good within that.
Still,
Yeah.
still with the buffer, I'm still thinking, you're saying 350.
Yeah.
Got a structure with doors, at least we know that number we're looking at, and Daryl and I can figure out
Sure.
where it's coming from.
Yeah. And then the other items such as, the fireplace, again, they're costs, but they're not monumental in the grand scheme of things. So An average flooring cost if we're going to do a polished concrete, and so you have those benchmarks you can use to start to have a cumulative, okay, this is probably the range of what it's going to be if we add these items in there.
And then the other thing about those are the heaters you call
Yeah, just unit heaters.
also would those go up or would those go on the side?
Those would be hung from the inside, yeah. And there might be something that we might investigate, a different solution that's simple, cost effective, but they're not the best looking thing, so trying to come up with something else that, but we're building new.
What you call, I've seen exposed heating ductwork.
Right.
That was painted, these industrial work, that looks very nice.
Yeah, and we would only need that if we're going with a heating and cooling system
Okay.
for the entire building. Good, all right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jim.
Have a nice weekend. Thank you.
You need a vote, or you got your consensus? You got the motion.
We've got a pretty good consensus. We'll just get the approximate cost for approvals. Everybody's good with wood.
If we're closing, steel.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying, like, you do like 4 doors on each side, so then that would give you pretty open, but it would give you maybe, 4 feet or so in between the doors.
So, but I think sort of towards the front where they have a solid wall, maybe we don't put doors all the way up there. So they're, maybe the first maybe 10 feet or 12 feet is all solid doors, solid.
Sure. Or like Scott said, too, we have those access doors. But they're built like into the door, but it's just like, just a single wall door. That you didn't keep all the doors open. You just wanted to keep in the heat, so to speak. You can kind of keep that, keep those smaller doors like a traditional door almost.
Yeah, like a traditional door, just showing on, the south side of the pavilion, but then you can have the ability on your east and west sides to get the effect of it being fully open or, close it off if you need it.
And, hooks or.
I like the, more of a motor. I don't want people having to pull a chain to open those doors. I mean, they don't go up, they honestly, they don't go up very fast. So you sit there pulling for quite a bit, but you might as well just put it on a button control, but have a way to lock it out.
Key switch.
Yeah.
So enclosed with structure is on there,
Yes. Same size.
electric, buttons, and everything. And then car doors, you guys said you could door for.
That's what I was thinking. And then like Heidi said, you can move the doors, the doors are closer to the building and leave some solid wall to the south end,
I would let you decide.
Yeah.
See where else it's at.
Right. And then you said keeping 50 back.
And what about height then too, because I think I don't know about the height now, but we want it, I wouldn't say we don't want it congruent, but we kind of want to have a natural from the peak of the building to.
Well, when he was in Portland, he talked about it would be more of a vaulted, inside versus the way that we had the way we had the beams coming across, like they're about 10 feet out.
But there were beams coming across, but there was a peak at the top, if you look on the outside. especially if we want to in the future.
high door, you'd be about 12 foot,
Well, we could
12
make,
foot high.
we don't need to make it that high, so it's just solid above it. It doesn't have, the door doesn't have to be any higher.
What I'm saying, if it was a 10-foot high door, you would have to go up about 1 or 2 feet above that door height, just to accommodate the headers and everything you need to support the weight of the door.
Especially if we're gonna incorporate the building later on into. You don't mind it, I would like it.
Well, the pavilion needs to get into the existing building. It says that ties in.
It's not, it's right up against it, it's not part of it.
Yeah. So this, I think, should tie in. For more stability, exactly.
So then I think where that front wall, probably the like a side and the window need to come off and be covered up or something.
Well, that's what Diana and I were talking about, those front windows need something on them to protect them, so that they are doing any kind of sports inside there. We're not worried about broken glass or
Well,
kids going through windows.
if we're putting 4 or 8 feet of garage doors with all windows, that kind of, it negates that.
Well, no, because, yeah, you go tempered glass versus regular, or some sort of acrylic glass.
The only way that glass piece goes away, it becomes a wall. And then inside, it's
Certainly can
totally
do that.
separate.
Can do that. You cut off some of the light that can go into the rest of the building.
Probably that's all the rest of the side of the building.
Okay.
The old business. New business. Any business. We're having vehicle purchasing issues, which I would like the chief to expand on.
Want me on this thing?
Johnny. Thank you, Johnny. We're struggling with cars right now. I've got 3 that have been sidelined for quite some time due to lack of parts and waiting on them. So I can't even use them. We lost one that was totaled out in a crash. So there's still evidence of it right around the corner here. I called Curry Ford is the one who does the suburban purchasing agreement with the state of Illinois, who makes a contract with the manufacturers to get a government price, so you don't have to go through the bidding process. Well, the problem is, since about March and then into late April, all 3 manufacturers, Dodge, Ford, Chevy, quit making police cars, period. You can't order them. They won't even accept an order right now. The issue is basically very simple. They sell those cars to us for between $35,000 and $40,000, or they dress them up a little bit, put them on the lot for $60,000. And which chip are you going to put into which car? So it's financial. Curry, I've talked to them a couple times. They said back in May that by July they would be accepting orders again. They're not. Now they're just saying maybe late fall, and they're only going to do a very short and temporary run of Fords. Chevy and Dodge have closed their lines down for the year. They're not going to make 2023 police cars, period. So it's going to affect everyone nationwide, and the costs are going up. So I've talked to some other chiefs around the state and stuff, and I know that some of them have actually traveled to other states to purchase cars that dealers have had in other states to get cars for their fleet because they were in such bad position. And what it comes down to is, I started searching for cars a little bit, and I looked in the Chicago area, and I thought I had found some at Willowbrook, but they were sold before I even reached out. As soon they haven't even received them from the factory yet. They're on last year's order. They were, as soon as they put it out that they had them for sale, they were sold immediately. So they just haven't taken them off the webpage.
So I've been on the internet and talked to a couple of dealers, some fleet people. There's no real light at the end of the tunnel right now, so the market is tough and the prices are going up, and you're not going to find anybody who's giving government prices because they don't have to. TrueCar, which is a company that basically, like Auto Trader and Cars.com and some of these other ones, TrueCar specializes in fleet vehicles, if you're looking for dump trucks and stuff like that. Researching on TrueCar, I found 113 Ford police utilities nationwide. So there are 0 in the metro Chicago area available right now. The closest ones that I see that are still available are London, Kentucky. So what it comes down to is if we want to get some cars, and I budgeted for 3 cars this year, if we want to get some cars, we're probably going to have to travel, and we're probably going to have to pay more than we normally would. I think in the last time we paid for cars, we paid approximately $37,000 to $38,000 per unit. The prices of the cars right here on TrueCar are going from $41,000 to $58,000 for basically the same car, because they don't have to go with government contract. And with the availability of these cars, if I want to get a car, it's going to be pretty much at their price. And I'm going to have to commit to it immediately because it's not going to be there very long. So I guess what I'm looking for is the board to give me some leniency on setting a maximum that I can spend so that if I find 3 cars tomorrow, I can pull the trigger. Or say I find them on Thursday, I would have to wait 2 weeks for a board meeting to get approval, and those cars are gone. They're not going to hold them for me without cash up front, is what it amounts to. So I won't spend $58,000 on a car that's the factory would sell you for probably $40,000 this year if you figure price increases and stuff. But I think it's going to cost us $5,000 to $6,000 more per car just to get them, and we're probably going to have to travel to find them. And Diana is in the same position with a 15-passenger bus. Can't find them. Randy has been doing the research on that, so I won't speak out of turn, but it's everything in the fleet field is just like in the regular car field. You can't find it. When you find it, they want a lot more money than manufacturer recommended price. So basically, it's kind of up to you. When we get these 3 cars on the road, that's fine, but in the meantime, there's 2 others that are sitting there with a lot of miles on them that I was going to give to EMA that I can't even give to EMA now, so he's not getting those cars. Normally, when we get the new cars, they would go to EMA. I can't do that now. So it cost me, it cost him. If we lose 1 more car for mechanical or any other reasons, we'll go from serious condition to critical condition pretty quick. I've quit allowing officers to come to the department and get a car to go to court. I could quit allowing them to come and get a car to go to training, even if they travel on it. We'll buy their gas, we'll pay them that way because I don't have the spare cars to do that. So that's the situation we're in. So I guess what I'm asking is for the board to, I would say, probably $45,000 to $48,000 would assure me of being able to find some cars, and I would do my due diligence to find them at 41. But I don't think driving to, or going to Scottsdale, Arizona and driving them back is worth for $41,000 car if I can get a $43,000 in Kentucky or something like that. So it would be a common sense issue. That's my car spiel. I do have one ace in my pocket, and Daryl doesn't know about this yet. But the insurance company accidentally sent me the check for the car we wrecked, so I've got a $25,000 check that I will put in the pot to cover those expenses. If that's okay with you guys, I'll give Daryl the check tomorrow. But anyway, I'll do whatever I can to get some cars. I have 3 cars right now that are down. 2 of them are actually new cars that we can't get the parts for the emergency lights, the computer systems, and all that stuff. It all goes back to the chip manufacturers. I have 1 new car that is on the road. I have 2 that we've had for 6 months, and we have 0 equipment in them because of the chip shortage. And then the 3rd one was involved in a minor crash, but the minor crash damaged the computer, so it's been sitting at Sutherland's for 3.5 weeks waiting for parts for that.
So the ones that you found are those Fords too?
Yeah, the only thing available is Ford Explorers. I think that they're still thinking about doing the pickup trucks, Dodge and Ford, for next year. I prefer the Explorers for what we do. They are much more valid for our type of use.
They're not making the
No.
No. Thank God.
Randy, looking for consensus?
Do you have
anything you want to throw in here?
Good evening. You know, moving forward, this is going to affect how we purchase vehicles for the village. You know, the consortium, like the chief said, they're not honoring government pricing. So whether we need a van for Parks and Recs, if DPW needs a pickup truck, you know, we're even thinking for the building department, we can't even get a pickup truck. There's no trucks out there. So that's why we need to jump on this. So I would recommend somehow we have to think of the village as a whole. So if we have access to a van or if we have access to a pickup truck, we can move rapidly on it. I wish I had better news for you, but that's just where we're at today. So the way we used to do business, you know, we currently can't do business like that.
And, yeah, it's the industry right now. Have we looked into any kind of leasing programs or options to see what's available out there for any of these vehicles? I know a couple of companies, departments up north, you switched over to rental or leasing agencies because there are no cars available, and somehow, some way, they have them.
Yeah, you know, it makes sense on the high end, even though you can lease ambulances, you can lease fire engines, you know, especially for the communities that can't, are limited in resources. Chief, I'm not familiar with, you know, the turnover is so quick, and, you know, we don't want to be, my department doesn't put a lot of mileage on vehicles, the police department's just the opposite. You know, so leasing something, we would outrun those miles in no time. You know, we've been very diligent, working very hard. We exhausted the secondary market. You know, no different than our light tower. There was one within 5 states. So we were able to grab that while we could. You know, we see that with, you know, that as an example with all of our equipment. So however we decide to have monies available for vehicle purchases, you know, it needs to be for, every department's going to be where the chief is right now. It's going to be Public Works, you know, it's going to be Diana, it's going to be Parks and Recs. So let's solve the problem for all the departments with one stroke of the pen. And we're already behind the 8 ball.
I think Mr. Wilson, we'll look into it. With Swarm, they're really good. It's a really good group where we'll email all the administrators and we'll just ask them, and I'll ask them, has anybody done this? How's it working for you guys? It's something really nice. We'll look into it.
What is it that we need to be, you know, considered here? I mean, like Randy said, we can talk, you know, we need to do this individually, do police cars, do, you know, vehicles, do the park van, or can we kind of as a whole just say the maxes that we have on it, we're suspending that based on availability and with the, you know, something to give you guys the ability to react as it happens so that we can get those vehicles knowing full well that it's going to go above and beyond the budget item.
We kind of ran a couple of ideas, scenarios. One is that we would have the latitude to go ahead and put a down payment down, hold it, and get the invoice, and bring it to the board. They'll hold it, but it's going to be 2 weeks away, and they're not, somebody not, most likely won't.
Right.
So, and I don't want to say case by case basis, but, you know, I don't think with one stroke of the pen, we should do that. But, you know, police vehicles might be a different than for even
Like Chief said, like, they have that window, you know, that, he's thorough and efficient, and he's gonna get us the best price, so, and so is Randy. I mean, so in the past, our department heads have been putting in their due diligence and making sure that, we get the most bang for our bucks, so, just with the supervision, overseeing, and overwatch of it, I don't see an issue. I like Trustee Gonzalez said, I don't think we need to abolish what we're currently doing, but case by case, then, you know, there's that window they have to operate so they can move, because it's here today, gone tomorrow. It's just like the housing market, you know, selling houses in one showing in one day. Vehicles, as soon as they hit the internet, they're getting inundated with offers, so we're gonna have to join in on the reindeer games, unfortunately.
See, that's my fear, is that we're gonna say, okay, Chief, you've got, you know, up to $48,000 to buy a spot car, but by the time he finds one that's available, the market has swollen enough to now that 48 is actually 52, and now, once again, we lose out because we only gave him the ceiling of 48.
That's why I said we don't
And
put a
that's-
ceiling on it.
That's why I don't wanna put a ceiling
Yeah.
on it either, I think we just need to get what we can get. And then.
But on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
So, Chief, what do you?
So buy the $100,000 one, and we'll split it.
There are some Escalades available.
Yes, yes.
I think, you know, and thank you, Trustee Wilson, because you nipped me in the bud, because I was starting to work myself up a little bit here. I think we've proven that you can have faith in us in doing our due diligence, and we have a check and balance, you know, with each other. We talk through these things. It's not like you're giving me a black card, and I'm going to do it without conferring with the administrator. And I'm a bit of a tight wad anyway, so I can't pay somebody $55,000 for something I know is going for 41 a couple states over, you know, but that's the name of the game right now. But you're absolutely right. It's if we pull the trigger, we have to have the ability to pull that trigger and move forward with it, or we're going to be hunting forever.
So is that one place in Kentucky have 3?
They have two black ones that we want right now, but that was as of 3 o'clock this afternoon.
So you're going home and going on the computer?
I already sent off a request for information on them after our meeting today, and I haven't had a response back, so.
So I said, I'm afraid to do a ceiling because I'm afraid that's gonna cause us to potentially lose out.
Yeah, I wouldn't do a ceiling either, like, you know, he knows.
Just
So-
get it done and do, I 100% trust the chief's gonna make the best deal that he possibly can, and that's gonna be the best deal for the village. Same with Randy's, you know, with anything that Randy does, same with Public Works, they've proven it, you know, proven it time and time again, that they don't just grab the first thing they see, they work for the best deal. And I don't know how we do that as a consensus, but, you know.
You know, I will add, when we bought our last EMA truck, you know, we didn't have a crystal ball, but we were afraid we were gonna be here, and we pulled the trigger on it, and we put a deposit down on that truck, knowing that we could very well lose our deposit if we don't go through with it, and it worked out. And so the administrator's point to using a deposit as a hold is very valid. The Parks and Recs vehicle is a very unique vehicle. There are not a lot of out
And
there.
I think that's got the best option for leasing,
You know.
something like that, that's a good option for that.
But if we're talking about 3 police vehicles tonight, that's what we need to make a decision on. So,
I'm trying to see what it is that you guys are looking for. This one, I know we can't take action. If it's something that's found and we can try and have, you know, something we can emergency, not gonna have to wait until, you know, the report, not then of course we'll change the whole 3-hour timeframe for those options.
We're just looking for a consensus, just where the board's at, and then we would ask for
3 vehicles, right? So if we're not taking action tonight, if Chief, is able to go get 3 vehicles, and then the only thing that we would have to change is if they went over budget.
I mean, does that require a board vote on a line item in the budget? If they're, in the budget for 35,000 apiece, he ends up getting them for 45, does that require a board vote to expand his budget for that?
You can, no, it can be done.
Exactly, so that's where I'm going with that, is that then
It's been
that really
approved.
negates having to really do a consensus or a vote on anything. If they've got, if 3 vehicles is what's in the budget, they get the 3 vehicles, then they just need to adjust the budget based on what the final cost ended up being.
So we don't need to take action whatsoever, but we know what your predicament is now, so.
Yeah.
That's all. So the
We're
way-
just,
the way
we're just
you-
looking for a consensus on a policy that it's built in,
Yeah,
with
we
a
don't
buffer.
need- Yeah, we don't need a written policy.
We need to, make sure with Larry that that's the case, but again, there where my mind is going, it's already in the budget. We're not talking about that he was budgeted for 2 vehicles, we want to buy 4. How do we, do we need to build that? It's something that's already in the budget, something we've already voted on, just that the cost is different.
And if we, and Daryl knows this, if we have to move it around within the police budget, then we could do so, or reallocate, right?
Yeah, you can, the bottom line of a department's budget is basically what you want to look at. So you may be going to spend a little bit more here, and somewhere else you're going to make it up in the budget. For something like this, you got a capital asset and you go over the expected amount. Basically, all you need is somewhere within a board meeting stating as such that we've given approval for that to occur.
That's what I was kind of going to say, because normally when we have any type of vehicle purchase, it is done on, it's on the agenda, and we say just approval for the vehicle and the amount of this purchase first. So that's why I was trying to see what you guys were trying to do, because, that's something that's still done prior to. We still have to do that.
We've always said, for the budget, which was already in the budget.
Right.
But we're just approving the final amount.
Right. So they're all in the purchases that normally are made, they'll say, okay, this is already a budget item, and so it'll already be in the budget, but there's still a vote made to authorize a purchase. Right.
So the only thing is, though, what Chief was saying, we can't wait 2 weeks to purchase, to see what the purchase price is gonna be. He has to purchase now, and then we'll just have to approve after the final cost of the vehicles, with that understanding.
Yeah, I think that's something you guys need to look at, because like I said, each time it's something that's done, the vote goes, based upon whether, even when it is a budgeted item. You guys give the approval and they go on it. And I'm not saying wait the 2 weeks. Like I said, there are different things we could do, put in place so that we don't have to, because it's a bona fide emergency. And that will fall under that category.
That's the problem, just because it's in the budget, Chief can't show up at a meeting
Right.
and go, hey, I got my car, it's budgeted, I
Right.
got it, and we all go, oh, okay.
Exactly.
But he needs that money to at least get that down payment down. So that, I think, is what Chief is looking for, the ability to say, when something's available, I need to hold it and can't wait for you guys to all figure out when we're all getting together to
So
talk
then
about
can we
it.
do a consensus for him to start the process, and then that way he can begin the purchase without knowing the final price?
I would do it the same way that we did for his purchase, because it was the same, it was very similar.
Right.
The timing. And so I did a phone poll. I called you guys, and in fact, I emailed you the invoice. So you all had the invoice, and then I just asked individually for your approval to go ahead and make this purchase.
I just don't want the chief sitting at the computer waiting to get by.
Right.
While you're trying to call six trustees to have us all say yes.
And so, and being devil's advocate here, what if they won't take down payment? We just have to make sure that he has the latitude to say, I need to purchase that, we can't put a down payment down.
Well, yeah, so instead of a down payment, it would just be for the payment.
For the whole
I'd be calling you for approval to make the purchases. And then
That's
we'll
what
have
I'm
an
saying.
invoice that you can have and see and
Yeah.
follow the specs. And
Just as long as you guys are doing it correct, 'cause you can't make a final decision outside of a board meeting. So you cannot give authorization on a poll over the phone for that because that violates, you have to do it still in the open meeting prior to.
Council, if there's, somebody to give the approval to like start the process and then the final vote, right before you sign the papers, knowing that approval.
So what are they currently requiring, Chief? They want a down payment while you secure the funds, or?
Basically, when you purchase a vehicle, we've been able, because of the availability and we're ordering them, we would just give them a PO. And then the purchase order would stand until the board authorized the release of the check. But that's dealing with the government purchasing co-op.
Okay.
So they're doing that for everybody, and as it's always been, I mean, they don't come out and tell you this, but I've had a decent relationship with Curry over the years, and if I called up and say, you know what, the taxes didn't come through this year, I can't afford all 3 of those cars, that car would be sold before the end of the week anyway. They would not, they weren't concerned about it. They want your commitment before they order the car, but that car is going to sell one way or the other. Now we're talking about out-of-state dealers, and they don't have government contracts or co-ops. They're talking, where's my money wire?
Okay.
Cash money. The phone's going to ring again in 2 hours. First come, first serve. It's that type of a battle right now. I have a question, just out of curiosity for myself. And Daryl, I think, is probably better suited to answer this, but I'm not exceeding my budget, bottom line, by doing this right now. We're only a few months into the budget. It will exceed that line item in the end run. But at this point in time, we're under budget. So, yeah, so we're not going over anything, number one, because we're only a quarter of the way through the fiscal year, and number two, because we're shorthanded, we've got a lot of leftover in salaries right now. So and this is just me asking, it's really not a budget matter of us going over budget, because the bottom line is what the budget is concerned about at this time. So whether it got postponed this meeting or the next meeting to the approval, we didn't exceed the budget in any of the purchase to begin with, and the purchases were approved when the budget was approved. Am I wrong in this? Am I thinking, or?
That's exactly what I was asking.
That's why I'm not sure what the action has to be pre to.
It's the dollar amount. So that dollar amount is needing the approval.
But see, the dollar amount is never in the budget. That line item is a total.
But if this specific purchase, it's over, so it needs board action. So, I mean, if the department head can purchase without board approval up to 10,000, and there's policy that's in place, but once it reaches a dollar amount, then you've got to have board approval to make that purchase. So that's what she's referring to.
Even though that purchase is approved.
Even though it's approved, it's
Okay.
in the budget, that specific approval, because of the dollar amount, it's being made aware of.
Got to be approved a second time.
Right, we're telling the public.
And that's what I was asking, is
Okay.
does that final dollar amount need to
But
be
there
approved
is-
prior to
There
purchase?
is a flexibility built into the law to do that purchase in an emergency. So does this classify as an emergency purchase? And that's what we would have to talk with legal counsel and say, can this be justified as an emergency to make this purchase because of the lack of availability of these vehicles and the need that we have? But that's the part I got to talk to Larry about. But there's flexibility built into it.
And what I was saying, just to clear, it wasn't necessarily just specifically with the amount, because if it, like you're saying, it's not something that's going over, but because of the fact, even if it's a budgeted item, whether you under, over, whatever, because of the fact that it's a purchase being made, the purchase always comes before the board, they approve, is what I'm saying, as far as with having action taken on it. Which, of course, like I said, this being, instead of waiting for 2 weeks or whatever, from whenever the meeting is, this would be considered an emergency when it comes on the public safety and all of that, which is what I was meaning as far as if it needs to be an emergency meeting held that violate, we don't have to worry about the 48-hour time frame. We can actually, if need to be done, we can get it set up so it's something that's immediate, as opposed to saying, okay, well, we got to wait until the next board meeting is, beforehand.
It's a water without board approval. It's a dollar amount that brings it to that level.
Exact. Right, but I'm just saying as far as over that, like you mentioned, as far as with the 10,000. So of course, they're all going to be over 10,000. But I'm saying it has to come before the board to approve that. But like I said, there are things in place to be able to have it and not have to wait that time frame. That's what I'm saying.
Does that approval have to come before the final signing for that purchase?
So, just reverse engineering this thing. If we approved 49,000 for 3 vehicles and he came under that, we approved, at the next meeting, we said, okay, purchase four vehicles for 49,000, and he came under that, then we would have to amend that, I'm assuming. Or is that an option? I mean,
Not to exceed.
yeah.
And that's what I think that, well, I don't even think, the chief's point, he found, 3 for 44,000, but what if they're 51,000 tomorrow?
Yeah.
So, or are we going to Kentucky, or do we have to go to Arizona to buy 41,000? So I don't think, maybe we should not to exceed, I think we should give them the latitude to purchase 3 police vehicles.
And I don't want to wait until next Wednesday for the board meeting to have the next purchase. We need to figure out how we can.
So the
We
new,
don't want it when we find it now.
yeah, under emergency, or purchase.
And maybe we can clarify that, due to, law number or ordinance number that says that, due to emergencies, as long as it says that this meets that criteria. Because now it's Friday night, so you can't see it until Monday morning now.
I'm going to, I'll be on email during the weekend to see what happens. That's the only way they'll communicate until they call me.
But they're there on Saturday, yes. So we can have that little thing they get for Sunday night meeting.
Yeah.
Right?
Seems like it.
As all of us are supporting you and everybody.
But you don't see yourself buying 3 from one dealer, right? It sounds like there's 2 in Kentucky, and you have to find another.
As of right now, yes. I mean, I'm gonna do it. If I get 1, I'm gonna snatch it.
Yeah.
If I get 3, I'll snatch it. It's just gonna be, it's just gonna be, and if I, if the third one happens to be in Honolulu and I have to go get it, that's it.
I was just gonna say, I'll volunteer. I'll volunteer.
Shipping might be a little bit testy on that one, but.
So we need some direction from Larry as to what we can do.
No, we've really done our due diligence, and we reached out to all the vendors that we've been dealing with, that the village has been dealing with decades, and we're on their backup list. If anything comes available, they know how to get hold of us.
Right now, we just need to do that. Anything else?
So where are we leaving this with the?
Table this later.
Okay. Maybe I'm off the subject.
Trustee Horn?
Yes.
Trustee Henson? No. Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Udris?
Yes.
Trustee Gonzalez?
Yes.
8:02 PM.